Hey, welcome to the Immutable Word. We're back for a new episode. We're going to be covering a rather deep topic, but before we go there, we had just wrapped up the Baptist Distinctive series. So if you haven't caught any of those, which I'm sure you've probably caught some of them, that's all we've been doing for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. We would like to hear from you if you have any comments about anything in those series. We did cover a lot. So be sure to check it out. Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different, so we're shifting. And before I do, Robert, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. What's going on, man?
Yeah, there's always a lot going on, I think, in both our lives, right?
Did you hear about the SBC?
The phone company?
No, the Southern Baptist Church Convention.
No. What about it?
They finally banned women as pastors. They officially voted on it, thousands of members.
By thousands of members?
Yeah, thousands of members of the Southern Baptist Convention officially voted to ban women from being preachers.
I would say that's pretty unexpected.
I mean, it's one of the few times that, we would agree with what the Southern Baptist Convention
Yeah,
is
that's
doing.
what I'm saying. You think it'd be the other way around, the way things
Yeah,
are going,
I mean,
right?
well, they ordained and they considered it, and even I think there were some churches, Southern Baptist churches, that did ordain women. So, but there's a lot of heat around it, and a lot of evangelicals and liberal churches and stuff that are up in arms, especially considering this month is the LGBTQA whatever month.
Yeah, perfect timing.
So there's a lot of debate around it, and the assumption is, and I think it's just a derivative of the Marxist culture, especially feminism, that that you're attacking women when you say they can't be pastors. So it's a shift of authority. They assume that the culture defines the standard, and of course the Southern Baptist Convention basically just lined up with the Word of God is what it comes down to. We say Southern Baptist. I want some of our listeners to understand we're not Southern Baptists. We're independent King James Bible believing Baptists. Very different, set of Baptists, different convictions. When we go back to those Baptist principles, our first assumption is that the Word of God is the absolute final perfect authority. So guess what? That's going to determine whether or not who can be a pastor or a bishop or a deacon in the church. So
Yeah, the Southern Baptist Convention always had perspective that they were a pretty liberal, very liberal institution.
and they are. I mean, in some ways, surprisingly enough, I don't know if many people know this, but the Southern Baptist Convention has probably been the most responsible group for pushing Calvinism. Some of the most Calvinistic colleges in the country is rooted in the Southern Baptist Convention.
Wow.
So a lot of their theology. Anyway, so there's a lot of problems wrong with the Southern Baptist Convention, but them voting and making a determination that women can't be pastors is the right determination.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I would
Surprising.
encourage our listeners, if you haven't already, the Unmovable Apologetics with Randy Keener and Caleb Hickam, they just released an episode on that today. So I would definitely go back, listen to it. And he also based it on an article he wrote in Watchman's Warning. So go over there to Watchman's Warning, read the article, and listen to the podcast if you get a chance. So
nice starting out with the plugs. But you do contribute to the articles, so that's another reminder. I'm going to plug in that you do contribute maybe 1 or 2 a week or so to some of their articles, so definitely check it out. And of course, check out our Substack as well. So you put out a couple things a week. But yeah, interesting news. What else? What else is going on?
Well, I mean, we've been talking about this, and we've talked about this off and on this podcast. We've touched on it a little bit, but got to thinking about it just recently. So, my second youngest daughter got married, a couple months ago, and my second oldest is married. The son got married, and then the oldest also got married. So I have one left. I have the youngest left, and so thinking about that, I know you and I have talked about finances quite a bit. We've had our own struggles financially, individually, and I think this year is, let's see, 26, 30, it'll be 31 years that, my wife and I have been married. So
that is a long time, man.
With that being the case, it wasn't we didn't always do the right things financially. So I've had to learn manually, through a lot of self-study, books, podcasts, other things to kind of figure out how to get my feet back on the ground financially. And of course, it's caused a lot of problems, in our marriage. And the Lord was gracious and merciful, and I think He opened up the door, gave us a lot of resources to kind of get a lot of that stuff under control. So I just thought it'd be interesting because there's a preacher comes through our church every now and then, RB Ouellette. So some people may know him. He's had a large church up in Detroit, Michigan for many, many years. And I think he's like pastor emeritus now. So he kind of is a traveling evangelist, but he's written a lot of practical books, principle led books. And he wrote a book called Under Pressure. Oh, and the subtitle was Overcoming Seasons of Stress with Biblical Wisdom. So one of the sections he covered was on finances. And he has a list of what he calls 15 principles of stewardship. Now, stewardship just means that you are a manager of a household. Okay. And in this particular case, the principles he outlines are financial. And, I wanted you and I to kind of just talk through some of these principles. I mean, we may cover all 15. We may just cover, we'll just go through some of them, but I know you've had your own journey financially, Alan. And so, I guess, what have you experienced?
Yeah, going back many years now, it's been a long journey. In fact, you're a big influence on me back in the day. So I learned a little bit from you as you started your journey in the financial world. And we weren't taught any of this. Like, this stuff isn't taught in school. The big difference between what we have available today is like the is just at the tip of our fingertips. We can just type in finances in YouTube. You're going to get like 100 different channels and people talking about finances. And the reality of it is that it's hard not to know or have knowledge of the wisdom of managing money today. It was harder then. And, our parents weren't the greatest at it either. So we did what we knew, and we thought getting in debt was something normal and something that everybody did, having car payments and things like that, and just living above your means and spending your money. Savings and investments were just knew nothing about until we started looking into it back in the day. But when I got married, which was about 25 years ago, it will be 25 years in February, it was a struggle for the first 5 years because we didn't have that knowledge or that wisdom that was imparted to us. And I know we're going to cover it here, but the funny thing is, maybe it's not that funny, but this information, all the wisdom is in the Bible. That practical money principles is all there. And if you paid attention, you live by those principles, you'd be in a much better state. And a lot of what you see out there in all these financial books, like everybody knows about Dave Ramsey, right? I mean, that was probably the first influence you had. You turned me on to Dave Ramsey back in the day, listening to the radio shows and learning about the baby steps, which I think I would recommend that to anybody if you're trying to figure out where you're at financially, and maybe you're trying to learn or turn things around because maybe you got yourself into a little bit of trouble. That would be the number one thing I'd recommend is like, hey, pick up Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover, follow his baby steps, and you'll get in a really good place really fast. Now, when it comes to investing, that's a whole different discussion and topic, and I think that's just as important because we're talking about the future and being a good steward in that sense. But I know we're going to cover that here. But yeah, this Brother Ouellette's book is a really good book, and he's got a lot of really good practical biblical principles around finances that pretty much all align.
It's really about the wisdom. I mean, one of the things I do want to clarify, like, this is meant to be kind of a top of our head. The principles are going to help guide the discussion, but I would say this is, we're not going to get super practical. We might give some practical advice, but at the end of the day, we couldn't cover that today. That'd have to be another series. And this is where we're talking about specific things like exactly what to budget and percentage of budgeting and things like that. But when it comes down to any of those practical steps, I feel, you can't really be practical unless you understand the principle. You know what I mean? It's like, as we kind of go through it, we talk about Dave Ramsey, like what was a famous saying? He says, "Act your wage," right?
Yeah.
Or live on less than what you make.
Live
Those are
below your
principles.
means. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're not going to cover the how to. That's when you get knee deep and into the weeds with budgeting and percentages and what budgeting tools you can use and spreadsheets and whatnot. But I think what these principles help at least is kind of help establish a perspective in the mind of a believer. So there's some people here, well, let me put it this way. I gave a little bit of my history as far as how I got where I was. When I went in the military, I mean, I signed up to go in my junior year of high school, and senior year, I did a delayed enlistment, so I waited till after I graduated, and I went in that August after I graduated, I think in May. So it was a few months, and of course, up to that point, I never really had a full-time job. I didn't make a regular income. And so for us, our mom giving us $10 here, $15 there, $20 there, that was huge money. And of course, what would we do? We'd go spend it. First thing we'd go buy candy, Cokes, go to the arcade, and we'd blow it, right? Because, we were never taught the principle of saving. It didn't make any sense to us. So we just knew money at some point would come in somewhere. And our parents were kinda like the same way. As if money came in, they might buy a new furniture or buy clothes or buy something, but it really wasn't, we just weren't taught to save. So when I went in the military, I think at that time, my monthly salary came out to like $700 a month. Now $700 a month, okay, in
Back
1990.
56, 60 years
Yeah,
ago or so. Yeah, it's a
yeah.
lot of money.
But in 1990, here's the thing, I didn't make $100. For me to make $100, that would be like, I could live on that for an entire year. So $700 was like, I'm rich, you know?
Jeez. Yeah, back
And
in sorry. No, I was gonna
no, go
say
ahead.
just like the buying power back then is just a huge difference. 20
Yeah,
bucks. I remember going to the grocery store back in 2000, 2001 for 20 bucks. I could get like 2 or 3 bags of groceries.
yeah,
And it's
that's
insane then.
crazy.
But
That's unheard of now. And
yeah,
but the thing is because I was so undisciplined with money, I didn't understand what saving was. If you were to ask me about, percentages and budgeting, I'd had no clue what any of that meant. So when I got a $700 paycheck and I had no bills, I had no debt, as far as I was concerned, that $700 was spending money. I just needed to find the closest store so I could spend it all. And that was my mindset. Well, I'm gonna get this every month. Are you kidding me? And so that was, when I got those paycheck, and I was living on base. So I was living in a dorm. I didn't have to pay for I think our meals were free for the most part, other than when I got to my duty station, you could still go to the cafeteria on base, and to pay for breakfast, lunch, and dinner was less than $4 or $5 a day. I can just go to the cafeteria, eat whatever I want.
yeah, it's
So
insane.
super cheap, right? So so that meant I could buy, and of course I was an idiot because they saw us coming. Most military bases, the retail stores in the city, in the community, start saying, "Man, we'll give you store credit for this, and store credit for that." And so, yep, sure enough, I got a J.C. Penney store credit, I got a Sears store credit, I got this and that. And I was like, "Man, yeah, I can get that stereo." And they're like, "Hey, it's only $15 a month in payments," you know? And of course, enough of that, next thing you know, like $600 in rent. I was renting a stereo, believe it or not. And anyway, the point is, I think people would kind of understand that there was just absolutely no discipline. There was no understanding of money, and I was saved, right? But nobody had ever sat down and showed me what the Bible said about money. Just never understood it. So that's why, to me, that's why when I started looking at these principles that Brother Ouellette put it in his book, they're so profound. They're simple. To me, they're simple. And most of these statements are no more than 10 or 15 words at the most. And here's what's crazy is these are so profound, but this can literally change a person's entire life. I don't know, Alan. I mean, if you look at this list, I mean,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just looking at it as you were talking about it, and it's It's so simple. It's kind of ridiculous. And just being able to have this in my hands as a 17 or 18-year-old or whenever you went to the military and that we applied it, I wonder how things would be different today. Hindsight's always 2020.
Right.
But no, just looking at it, it's just absolutely simple, but it's hugely impactful to
So
everybody
so
financially.
what I wanna do, just for time's sake, I'm gonna read all 15, and then, just we'll just go back and forth on a few of them.
Yeah, yeah, we can make it a series if we wanted to. Just just kinda play it by ear.
So here's the 15. It's called 15 Principles of Stewardship by R.B. Ouellette. And again, it's from his book Under Pressure: Overcoming Seasons of Stress with Biblical Wisdom. So if you can get the book, I encourage it, because it's not just about money. He's got all kinds of other, practical advice and principles he covers. But this stood out. I teach a biblical finances class at our Bible college. So with that being said, let me go ahead and go through the list. So number one, I think obviously this is foundational, but and think of it this way: these principles are, I need to change my entire perspective about money. And so the first one I think is the most obvious. It's number one: none of it is yours; it all belongs to God. I mean, profound. The money, it's not because you bring in a big paycheck, or you make this extra money because you work hard, and God will bless that. The Bible says in all labor there's profit. But the first and foremost principle, especially if you're going to try to get in the mindset of doing the right thing with money, is number one: none of it's yours. It all belongs to God. That's your car, it's your wallet, that's your traditional IRA, that's your Roth, those are your index funds. Those are your, single stock investments. They are your goods, everything. It belongs to God. None of it's yours. So that's number one. Number two, I think this is another profound statement. Money is a neutral substance. It can be used for good or evil. Now, some people go, "Oh, money's evil," but that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil, not money. Money could be used for good or for evil. So money is a neutral substance. Some people get so fearful of money that they try to get rid of it quickly, or they make the wrong decisions about it. So that number two, money is a neutral substance. It could be used for good or evil, is a deeply profound principle. This is another one. Number three, money can be invested forever, but listen, but spent only once. Isn't that interesting? I think that's why I love this list. Money can be invested forever. That means you can continue to invest money as you make income. And if you do it right, you can actually make money invest in itself. Work, you know what I mean? So you're going to gain interest on investments, and that interest is going to be reinvested into the principal, or the, you know what I mean? The principal, or the interest that you make off the principal is going to reinvest in itself. It can work 24 hours a day. But once you spend it, that's it. No more second chances. It's gone. So I don't know. When you think about, we'll go through here. Let me go through the list. Number four. It's sinful. Watch. It's sinful to spend more than you have. Foolish to spend all you have. It's sinful to spend more than you have. Foolish to spend all you have. Number five. Most financial problems can be traced to ignorance, indulgence, or irresponsibility. Most financial problems can be traced to ignorance, indulgence, or irresponsibility. Number six, God expects us to increase what he gives us. God expects us to increase what he gives us. Number seven, God is against get-rich-quick schemes. Okay? That's taking shortcuts to try to get money. Number eight, God is against loving riches. That's obvious. 1 Timothy 6. Number nine, God is against trusting in riches, because our trust should be in the Lord, right? Number nine is God is against trusting riches. Number 10, God is not against riches. So number 8 is God is against loving riches. Number 9, God is against trusting in riches. But number 10 is God is not against riches. So just because you're rich doesn't mean you're automatically sinful. So we'll look at that passage in 1 Timothy about that. Number 11, the more you spend when you're young, the less you'll have when you're old. The more you spend when you're young, the less you'll have when you're old. Number 12, spending should be deferred, giving should not. Spending should be deferred, giving should not. Number 13, wealth and poverty, both wealth and poverty are equally dangerous. Okay. Number 14, money is not what life is about. Money is not what life is about. I mean, we know some of the most miserable people on the face of the planet are rich people. So, number 14, or is money is not what life is about. And then the 15th one, last principle is you must pay for every purchase. Wise people pay when they purchase. So you must pay for every purchase. Wise people people pay when they purchase. So Ellen, just going through that list slowly, thinking about it, what are your thoughts?
If I were to start with one that stuck out was probably number 11. The more you spend when young, the less you have when you're old. And that can cover a couple different things. And the one you're talking about is your own experience that you were in the Air Force, and once you got your paycheck, you'd spend it. Some people would spend more than what they have. They're not living below their means. I am absolutely 100% guilty of that. I spent everything I had, and I got credit cards and paid my bills with credit cards. Then even use the overdraft limits in my checking account too to spend and barely make rent and things like that. And how are you're essentially stealing from yourself later on in the future. You're stealing from your future self. There's a YouTube channel I like watching. There's a guy that's biblically minded too, and he talks about finances all the time. And when he talks about good stewardship with money and saving and investing, he would always say at the end of his channels, like, your future self will thank your younger self, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And it's pretty profound. I mean, it's deep, but it's so impactful in somebody's lives that they can grasp that principle. I'd say number 11 it was a big one, and then number 15, you must pay for every purchase. Wise people pay when they purchase. So, for example, when we see a lot of people go to the dealership, do you think they're paying cash for their $70,000 trucks? Probably not.
Just the down payment.
I've heard all the justifications for it's like, hey, I'm going to be driving this thing for 10 or 15 years. Yeah, right. They're going to trade it in 5 years. That's typically how it works. And then roll the balance over. But I've heard the justifications from people I really like, and they're close family. I'm not trying to diss on them, but out here, I'm going to be driving this thing for 10 or 15 years. It's an investment. I need something so I can haul stuff all the time. I never haul anything. And, just things like that.
Right. There's all these practical reasons they convince themselves, that they need it. And the problem, and like you're kind of alluding to, wise people pay when they purchase. Well, a fool pays in payments.
I was trying to be nice about it, but that's essentially it. And
yeah, because I mean, if you can pay for it up front, you're going to be better off. The car is, I think, is a
100%.
perfect example. I think people retire poor because of vehicles. That's probably the number one reason.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. I can tell you right now, if people call it an investment, they call it's something that they need. It is the biggest depreciating asset that you can own.
Fastest, quickest.
It's the fastest. It is a piece of junk. As soon as you drive it off the lot.
Yeah. The minute you drive off the lot, what is it? They say it's like 20% of its value is lost.
And nearly 50% in about 3 to 5 years or so.
And in the first 2 years, I mean, you're basically still paying the interest off the vehicle. By the time you pay that vehicle off, you've paid. Basically, the price of that vehicle is the you paid out of your pocket is probably 3 to 4 times what that car is even worth. By the time you're done.
There's so much to it too, where the opportunity cost of what that money could have been used for.
Yeah.
And I'll save that for later. But when you're paying $1,000, that's the average. It's like people are paying $1,000 a month. We're talking about that's rent, that's mortgage for a car that's depreciating.
Now, I want people to stop and think about this for a second. Let's just say you have $1,000 car payment. Some of you have $500 car payments, $700 car payments, right? Now, I want everybody to think about the financial situation they're in right now. And imagine if all of a sudden you got a raise at work and you started making $1,000 a month back in your pocket. I mean, you could probably hear people's like sighs of relief, like, wow, I have an extra $1,000 in my pocket. They don't think about that when they walk onto the car lot. And 6 months into that, where you're making $400, $500, $600 payments, and then you're on top of that, you're paying the insurance, you're putting gas in that vehicle, you're having to keep up with the maintenance, and sometimes changing oil now, if you go to even Walmart, it could be $60, $70, $80 to change oil. That's $900 a year, people.
Yeah, it's
So
insane.
anyway, so just this one example of cars, wise people pay when they purchase. Listen, if you had to buy a junker for $3,000, and all you had to do is keep up with your maintenance, and even if you had to do $5,000 in repair for a $3,000 car, that's $8,000. Here's the thing. If you're making $1,000 payments, you've already paid a $12,000 in 1 year. What if you got a little junker and you were able to put, and let's just say you paid $3,000 for it, and you were able to put what, $300, $400, $500 a month aside? And into it, even if it was like a CD with 4% interest, a 1-year CD or a 2-year CD, and you were to put that's over, you would have, even with $500 a month, that's $6,000. That's $6,000. Imagine if you had $6,000 in your pocket right now. I'm not saying you're going to get, a BMW or a Mercedes Benz. What we're saying is you're going to get a halfway decent car that'll probably last you a few years. And so I think about this, that, like you said, that you must pay for every purchase, and wise people pay when they purchase. So the
Yep.
first part, you must pay for every purchase. Guess what? You're going to pay for it regardless.
Right. It's
But
just,
wise people are going to try to pay it up front now.
so one last thing, and that's the reason why it really stuck out at me, is especially with the car payments and stuff, is the opportunity cost. Having more money obviously in your pocket, finding a used car that you saved up for. I mean, you can find really good, reliable cars for a fraction of the cost of a brand new car from off a lot.
Right.
And it'll last you as long as you take care of it. I remember our dad would just would tell us, is like, hey, as long as you change the oil and put gas in it, it'll last forever. And he was not mechanically inclined at all. And even with him, his used cars would last for years. I know cars are different today than they were years ago, but still, you can find yourself a car if you're really tight and you need transportation. $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, you can actually still find a car, even with high mileage, that's going to last you as long as you take care of it. I'm experienced. I've never bought a brand new car, and I've driven these cars until the wheels fall off, and it would sometimes take years and years and years for that to happen. But here's the opportunity cost. I like doing the math on this stuff because I'm kind of a nerd about the finances now. But let's say you're putting $1,000 a month into a car. And what's the average interest rate? It's like 6%, right? You're paying 6% to some dealership, and you're sending that guy's kids to school. So that 6% is what you're losing, in addition to appreciation, in addition to the repairs and the maintenance of a new vehicle over time. And it all adds up really quickly. But imagine if you took $1,000 and invested it, and you were making 6%. And what's the number of years people usually finance for? Like, I don't know, like
At least 5, 6 years now. Sometimes 7. It just depends.
7 years. Yeah. So you're out however much money, like $70,000 plus interest and maintenance and repairs. If you took that same $1,000 and put it into an investment account for the future, and it earned a measly 6%, the same of what you're paying, you would end up with $83,000 in that same time period. $83,000. The money that you're paying for a stupid car. But anyways, I wanted to plug that in there because that's the math. And that's the hard numbers behind that.
Yeah.
That's the
And
impact.
here's the thing with that statement. Like, once you put that money into a savings or an investment account, and you just did it for 5 years, and then you stopped putting any more money in it, the interest itself would continue to grow every
Oh,
year.
yeah. They call it the
And it would
magic of compounding.
That's right, and it's compound interest. That means that the interest will gain interest as it gains interest on top of interest. So that's where your money works 24
Yeah.
hours a day.
And that leads into number 2, really, because that's the other one that stuck out was number 2, is that money is a neutral substance. It's a
Mhm.
tool. It is nothing but a tool. If you love it, if you trust in it, all those things are absolutely wrong. But if you use it as a tool, as God intended, and there's biblical principle to that, that's how you're supposed to use it. And the money works for you. They're like your employees. And if you use it right, if you deploy it correctly, that's what it will do for you, and you'll be blessed because of it.
Right. Well, the one that probably stands out to me is number 5. Most financial problems can be traced to ignorance, indulgence, or irresponsibility. And
It's a
I
good
can
one.
say I was guilty of all 3 of those.
Yeah, me too.
So, yeah, and here's the thing, this is I didn't say this in the beginning, but most people don't realize that the 3 greatest reasons, and this was part of I can't remember the study, but they wanted to find out what was the 3, or there was like 5 of the most common reasons why people go through a divorce. And they said the 3 top reasons, number 1 was infidelity. I think that's obvious, right? Spouse cheating on another spouse. The number 2 was the wrong third party in a marriage. So, for example, the wife's mother controls the marriage, and she gets all her advice from her mom, right? Or the husband gets all his advice from his buddies at work about how to manage his marriage. So the wrong third party. And then, of course, the number 3 top most reason was money problems. So what's interesting is people think, "Oh, it's incompatibility," or, they've fallen out of love. No, one of the most common reasons that a husband and wife will fall out of a marriage is money. So when it comes back to this, most financial problems can be traced to ignorance, indulgence, or irresponsibility. I mean, ignorance, obviously, we've been talking about it. We didn't know anything about money. We didn't know how to control it. I didn't even know where my money was going, okay? And, I think that was the big, and I'm sure, Alan, you probably have a story like this, but I remember when I first started digging into money, one of the first exercises you had to do was you had to track at least 60 to 90 days of your spending. I did 6 months. I went ahead and dumped every one of my financial accounts, my bank accounts, my debit card transactions, credit card transactions, everything, and I traced 6 months worth of my spending. And here's the thing, I was making 6 figures a year, and, at this point, and this was, I'd say, I wanna say it's 6, 7, 8 years into our marriage, and I was making 6 figures a year, and I was living month to month, barely, literally, I would have almost nothing in my bank account by the end of the paycheck, and so I was like, "Man, where is this money going if I just had," and so guess what? I did the 6-month exercise. I found out that going out to eat and food, we were spending almost $4 to $5,000 a month on just going out to eat. That's I think if people have heard that, 4 to 5,000, that's 50 to $60,000 a year going out to eat.
Think about it this way, these weren't, like, really nice, posh dinners. They were just, like, going through the drive-through, getting a
Mhm.
coffee, getting the food for the kids, just stuff like that, right?
But never cooking at home, always going out to eat, and of course, I had 5 kids at the time, so there's 7 of us. Every time we went out to eat, it was 7 of us. And I'm telling you, that was probably one of the most eye-opening things I'd seen in my life, and it's just like, wow. So the ignorance piece is, it's kind of a two-way street. It's like not being not having knowledge about how to manage money, but also not knowing where your money's going. And then, of course, indulgence, right? I gotta have that now. That was probably one of the hardest things, is if I saw it and I liked it, in my mind, I needed to have it. I needed to get it right then and there. So if I didn't have the cash on me, credit card. Boom. I could just pay it off later. I'll just make minimum payments on my credit card. Well, here's the problem, is those minimum payments add up. And then, of course, irresponsibility. There was times that I needed money for a very important, utilities or bills or things like that. I remember, missing car payments because we wanted to go out to eat. I mean, literally, my credit was so horrible by the time, we lived in Dallas for a while. By the time we moved to Austin, it's like, man, my finances was just it was junk. I mean, it was horrible, horrible. And it took me a long time to try to buy a house. Our first house, I remember, what should have taken about a month to close and get all that stuff. It took me almost 3 months because I had to chase down every single creditor I owed. And here's what I didn't mention this earlier, but when I was in the Air Force, when I was 22 years old, I was getting out of the Air Force. The year before I got out, I declared bankruptcy because I was so far in debt. I couldn't pay. So of course I destroyed my credit with bankruptcy. I didn't have a dime to my name. Anyway, I'm just telling people go, "Oh, well, Robert, it's not that bad." And, you're I don't think people understand just how bad it was. And I'm telling you that it was, with our marriage, it was kind of on the brink. I mean, there was times where me and Yvonne, it was just horrible, you know what I mean? Week after week, and neither one of us was good at money.
I was going to
So,
ask you because you're telling me the statistics on marriage, which is astounding. That finance is the core of that. I know it's kind of a personal thing. When we're talking about finances, 'cause finances are personal,
yep,
but I would say like that was the tension and probably the struggle that you had when you were young and married. Same exact thing here for like 5 to 10 years. That was like a source of tension was the finances.
yep, yep. And I don't think people realize just how harsh it can be. Because you feel like you're in a prison. You can't get out of it.
You're
You're not
stuck.
making any more money. You know what I mean? You can't free up your income. You've got all these debts and these obligations that now you've just tied yourself to because of stupidity and irresponsibility, indulgence, and ignorance, right? That pressure's gotta come out somewhere, and it comes out in your marriage. You get frustrated. Your wife wants something nice, you guys just wanna go out somewhere nice, and you can't afford it. You're living
Yeah.
paycheck to paycheck. Your vehicle breaks down for the 5th time, and you're still making payments on it.
Dude,
I
that's
just
so bad when that
mm,
happens, when you're barely surviving. I mean, I'm
mhm.
sure a lot of people's been there, but if you're not managing your money right, you're in debt, you're spending more than what you have, and your car breaks down, it's like this earth-shattering moment. That's how much of a big impact it is for somebody.
Here's the thing too, I think that people that number 1 is none of it's yours, it all belongs to God. Honestly, until that became clear to me, like it's easy to say that off the top. Oh, well, I know everything belongs to God,
Yeah.
but that's not how you live. You don't really believe that. If you look at your spending habits over the last 90 days, could you really look at your bank account and your spending habit and say, "Yeah, I really belong all this belongs to God." No. You think the money's yours and you spend according to your preferences and your likes and your lust. And so when I finally acknowledged, "Man, God, this is your money. These are your resources, and I've abused them, and, I've sinned against you with regard to my responsibility and my obligation." That was the start. I needed to be there. I needed to get to that point where I realized it is my fault for getting us here. I'm the man of the house. I should have been more responsible. I should have understood these things. Okay. So I'm not going to say that it was just our parents' fault for not teaching us. It's as much my fault as anything else. I could have learned these things, but that's what I did. And so, because it could get really drear if we keep going through all these stories, horror stories. But I would tell folks that are listening to us that are maybe struggling, the light at the end of the tunnel starts where you acknowledge this belongs to God.
Hey everyone, this is Alan. We're concluding part 1 of the 15 Principles of Financial Stewardship. We'll be continuing in part 2 next week, so we hope to see you there as well. We hope you've enjoyed the episode and what you've heard so far. If you'd like more information, you can find us at theimmutableword.com. If you'd like to drop us a line, you can do so at theimmutableword@gmail.com. So thanks again for listening. We hope to see you on the next episode. Take care.